Welcome to Astro Venture, the DSLR astrophotography channel. Hey there, Astroventures, welcome back. If you're new to this astrophotography channel, my name is George, and this is the astrophotography channel for DSLR, mirrorless camera bodies, and the lenses we already own, and a simple star tracker like the Sky Guider Pro or the Star Adventurer. Recently, within our Astroventure DSLR forum on Facebook, I have been discussing with one of our members about using a Astro modified camera or a full spectrum camera versus a stock camera, and we've been kind of discussing some of those growing pains, because when you make that leap into one of these modified cameras, you know, you're thinking that right off the bat it's going to unlock all this additional light and color, and that's true, but the learning curve can be really frustrated. So we're going to be doing a series on the Astro modified or full spectrum cameras, and we're going to get that started. First off, we're going to get a baseline in this video, and we're going to take a look at stock cameras. We're going to take a look at the Astro modified camera or the hydrogen alpha modification. We're going to take a look at the full spectrum camera and the pros and cons for each one of these, and who are they for? Should you get it? Should you get the modification done? So let's get started. First up, looking at the stock camera. With stock cameras, they're great because they show the world to us as we see it. We see what we call visible light. There is also other lights that are visible, such as ultraviolet and infrared. However, as humans, we just don't see it. So we naturally, in building our cameras, we put filters over the lenses to filter those other wavelengths out, because although the camera sensor can see it, we don't. And we want a camera to show us the world as we see it. So, benefit of a stock camera, it shows us the world as we see it. With that, about 15%, due to the filtering, about 15% of the red from hydrogen alpha will get through. So, in a lot of videos you hear people talking about taking their images, and they'll talk about capturing that hydrogen alpha in there. Because you're only getting 15%, you can capture some of these nebulas with a lot of hydrogen alpha, but you need a lot more data to increase or collect enough of this 15% input of hydrogen alpha red coming into the camera. So you can do it, it just takes a lot more data. Daily use, you know, it's how probably most everybody started out, is using their daily use camera, and then they jumped over and got into, you know, astrophotography. So they're great for daily use, as well as being able to shoot galaxies. Now, with galaxies, there is some hydrogen alpha that can be pulled out around some of the galaxies, but it's not that great, unlike when you're shooting a nebula. So, galaxies right up the alley of using a stock camera. Nebula. A good portion of the nebula are hydrogen alpha gas. However, there are some out there that are not hydrogen alpha or not primarily hydrogen alpha. And so again, a stock camera will work great, such as like the Iris Nebula. Lots of beautiful blue in there. There's no need for an Astro Mod to pick up that hydrogen alpha, because it's not there. The Iris Nebula is beautiful blue. So again, depending on the target, galaxies, stock camera, great. Nebula, selectively choosing the nebula, stock camera can work great. But again, do keep in mind, you can still capture hydrogen alpha. So let's move on to the Astro Mod. So with the Astro modified camera, what happens is you send your camera into, or you may do a little bit of YouTube video searching, but you have a filter removed off of your camera's sensor, and we no longer are limited to the 15% of the hydrogen alpha red coming into the camera, we can now get 100%. And so what this will allow you to do is when you are shooting nebula with hydrogen alpha, that hydrogen alpha will come right into the camera. It's no longer filtered out from getting in there. Now, with that said, benefit of the Astro Mod, it's one of those things where you know, I want to jump in, but I don't want to totally jump in. With an Astro Mod, removing that filtering of the hydrogen alpha red, you are then able to set a custom white balance and cancel out that red to use the camera as a regular camera. Now, with that said, what that means is that the preset white balances in your camera no longer work because that filter is gone. However, with a custom white balance, you can return this camera to a normal functioning capability through the custom white balance. So the Astro Mod is really great, and for most people, I think this is actually the best way to go for most people, because a full spectrum modification completely takes it out of the realm of being a regular camera. So this allows you the versatility of a regular camera, but it also allows you to capture the full red coming in from some of those hydrogen alpha clouds in the different nebula that are out there. So for most people, I think this is the way to go. Let's take a look at the full spectrum. Now, the full spectrum camera, if you decide that you want to have this modification done to your camera, this is essentially a naked sensor. All filters are gone except for a piece of protective glass over the sensor. If you decide to do this, first off, I would tell you, don't do it if it's not a camera that you plan to dedicate as only your astrophotography camera, because your daily use, it's done. It's over, not gonna happen, because the full spectrum is picking up UV light, infrared light, and who knows how many other alien forms of light might be out there. But all joking aside, it picks up every bit of light from any source. And with that, you would not believe, and it's one of those things when you start using a full spectrum camera, you wouldn't believe how many different little stray lights from different places will mess up a full spectrum image because it is so much more sensitive. You generally pick up about 1 to 1.5 stops of additional light sensitivity by having all of those filters gone. Now on the Astro Mod, you're looking at about 1/2 stop of additional sensitivity. So with this 1 to 1.5 stops, benefit is that you don't have to shoot as long, so you can, go to a shorter exposure time. You could use a lower ISO because it is more sensitive. But like I said, with this increased sensitivity and having a naked a naked sensor with nothing inhibiting anything, the slightest little things can really mess up the image that you're capturing. And I have had nights where I've imaged the entire night and some little, light somewhere off on the side somewhere is enough to mess up an image, and I'll end up with a bit of a hot spot, an uneven gradient in there because it was picking up light and that color from that light. So if you're going to do full spectrum, this is one of those things where you're taking full commitment and you're going to go for it. This camera also does not work ideally for doing landscape astrophotography because, again, the colors get messed up and you're not going to get them to a neutral point like you can with an Astro Mod. If you're wanting to do that landscape astro, you definitely want to look at the Astro Mod because you can cancel out and return your color balance back to a natural look while having that sensitivity. So for the full spectrum, the intention, you're pointing this up into the sky, you're not chasing the ground, and this is really intended for your nebula. You're going after all those colors that are out there. This doesn't do you a whole lot in regards to galaxies, in my personal opinion. Yes, There is some hydrogen alpha out there that you can pick up with it, but really this is targeted, in my opinion, as a nebula camera where there's lots of full spectrum. So let's do a quick recap on this of what camera for who. So here we go. Pros and cons, who's it for? Stock camera, it's where we all start out. Pros, versatility, you don't lose your camera as a daily use camera, and you can still use it for a lot of the great targets out there in space, and you can capture the hydrogen alpha, but you're filtered to about a 15% sensitivity of being able to capture those colors, but you can do it. This is where you want to start, this is where you want to learn, and down the road, if you find that you stick with it, then you might consider one of the other two modifications. So the Pro, versatile, you can use it for anything. Cons, you don't have the sensitivity for the hydrogen alpha that you would with one of the other modifications. Moving on, you decide to stick with this. You want to capture some of those beautiful reds, the Astro Mod or the hydrogen alpha modification. This one will allow you pros. You could still keep the camera as a regular camera. You can do custom white balances to zero out the reds. You can use filters on it. It really allows you to play in both worlds while still giving you the sensitivity, and I think for most people this is the way to go. The con, it's not going to have all of the sensitivity of the full spectrum, but it's not going to have the limited sensitivity of the stock camera. Okay, going on to the full spectrum. This one here, this is very specific. You don't need this for galaxies out there, star clusters. This is intended for your nebulas with all of that hydrogen alpha gas that's out there. You have increased sensitivity, however, you're not going to be using this one for doing landscape astrophotography. And it's truly, once you take this plunge, you are committed to astrophotography with this camera. So pros, you've got a heck of a lot more sensitivity, and you're going to pick up the full range of colors that our eye cannot see and that the filters block out in the other two. The con, extremely limited as to what you're going to use it for. There you go. Okay, so I hope that helps with stock Astro in full, just to explain what each one is doing for you, and I strongly recommend you probably, if you're considering this, Astro is probably the way that you want to go, the hydrogen alpha modification. In an upcoming video, we'll go ahead and dive into taking a look at some of the files, and we'll take a look at what you need to do to go ahead and edit those photos, because a full spectrum gives you a quite ugly red cast that you have to correct and adjust for, but it does capture everything. So until next time, I would love to see you over at our Facebook DSLR group. This is a Facebook DSLR, at our AstroVenture DSLR Facebook group. That's where the idea for this video came along, and I should actually say series, because we're going to do more with taking a look at these Astro Mod and full spectrum cameras. But that's where that idea came from. I would love to see you over there, and who knows, maybe you have a question and it might spur a video, because I'm sure if you have the question, there might be other people that are curious as well. And lastly, new moon weekend at the time of this shooting, so I hope everyone gets out there, and I wish you clear skies and uneventful nights.